as they say, call the meeting to attention if not to order. Since we are, well, that's why it's not being called to order. We're one committee member shy of a quorum. But we do not have action items on which to vote. We do have three presentations, so, and we have the presenters here, so I will take advantage of the time. So it is what, 7:10? And we're calling the meeting to attention as they do to my friends in the South, not to order, so we can begin. Can everyone on Zoom hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, great, great. So I'm Wayne Benjamin, and I chair Land Use for Manhattan Community Board 12. This is the June meeting, and this is our last meeting before we break for the summer, and we'll be back in September. So before we get into this meeting, let me have my committee members who are present introduce themselves.
Yes. Hi, guys. I'm Eitan Steinbaum, member of the board for the past year or so, and vice chair of this committee, member of Concerns of the Aging Committee. And thank you all for being.
I'm Jim Berlin. I've been on the board much longer, and I'm also on the Traffic and Transportation Committee, and the board parliamentarian, and I was chair of the board back at the committee.
Thank you, Jim. And we have Indiana, who used to be on the Land Use Committee, but she is a board member. Indiana, why don't you introduce yourself? You're muted.
Thank you. You'd think I would, have gotten it by now. Good evening, all. I'm Indiana Porta, and like Wayne said, I used to be on land use, and right now I am the chair of Housing and Human Services and come to all the land use meetings I can.
And Indiana, before you put yourself back on mute, a question came up while we were just sitting here. Has HPD confirmed it's presenting to Housing and Human Services tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow at 6:30.
Okay, great. Great. So those land use committee members who are interested can be there. So as I mentioned, we do not yet have a quorum, but we have three presentations. So I want to take, advantage of the time and begin with an update from our friends and colleagues at the Hispanic Society Museum and Library. And in the time I've been on the Land Use Committee, we've had several presentations from the Hispanic Society because they have a wonderful but old campus. And there's a lot of work that's required to, make it accessible, and they're working on that. And there's a lot of work required to just maintain the facility and improve the mechanical system. So, with that, I will have, Cynthia and Natalie and Amy give us an update on where they are and what they're doing in June of 2026.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you. And it's nice to see everyone, even if virtually. We appreciate this time. So we wanted to give you a brief update of where we are. As you know, I think last time Natalie and I were in front of the committee, we presented on the upcoming renovation of the North Building, which is still in progress and will take place. There's been a slight delay due to the process that DCLA, that we're going through with DCLA, the review process, et cetera. So we don't have yet a green light committee meeting scheduled. But so once we have that, that sort of triggers the timeline for when the construction is going to take place. We expect that we're going to have to, we will have to scaffold the building because we're replacing windows, we're replacing the roof. So as soon as we have a defined date, we will of course come back in front of the committee and give you an update. But we don't expect that to happen at least until the spring at this point, because after the Green Line meeting, there'll be some time before we're going to contract, et cetera. So we just wanted to give you an update on that front. And another update, a brief update, so we wanted you and the members to hear from us, is that we have engaged on a purchase agreement with Boricua College to acquire the Boricua College building, which, as you know, is part of our campus, is part of Audubon Terrace. So this will be the fourth building that the Hispanic Society owns. on the Audubon Terrace. We're still in preliminary, we've signed a purchase agreement, but we're still conducting due diligence. It's not a definite yet, but we wanted you to hear it from us first. And we will give an update to the committee certainly by when we can convene again in September, whether this has happened or not.
Anything else from other representatives of the Hispanic Society?
I just came because I missed all of you.
Okay.
We miss you too.
Another former Community Board 12 member, Natalie Espino. So I've a question. If the sale or purchase goes through, how will that building be used?
So and that's part of the reasons why we're still, I still consider this a preliminary case. We need to figure out all the code requirements. Right now, the certificate of occupancy that the building has is for an educational purposes. Certainly, there will be a significant educational component in which Natalie, as you know, leads that for the Hispanic Society. We plan to use a large portion of the building to expand our educational offering to the community. And we're in discussions, actually, Natalie and I were emailing today about putting out the plan, the perspective plan of what the educational program would look like in the new building. There's definitely plan to use some of the existing office spaces, and these are designed faculty office spaces, which we would use for administrative purposes. And we would like to then use one of the floors for gallery spaces so that we can expand sort of the visitor experience that people have for the Hispanic Society when they come to the Hispanic Society. But it's still, early stages, and we have to determine all these things.
Yeah, I was going to say that based on past discussions with the Hispanic Society, my understanding is that there is a need for office space. There is a need for educational space, a space for like public purpose education. And obviously there's a need for space for like more gallery revolving exhibits. So it sounds like the building could meet a number of those needs, and C of Os can be modified. And I'm sure your architects, and I believe you're working, with some firms that are pretty well known in the preservation field, they would know what to do. It also strikes me that it is not every day that you get a second chance, because my understanding is decades ago, and I do mean decades ago, the Hispanic Society had the opportunity to purchase this building, and instead, I think, just deferred and let Boricua purchase it. So now you have the second chance to get it again.
Right. And, it gives us a wonderful opportunity. And Natalie, I think, you want to contribute, but it gives us a wonderful opportunity to have full frontage on Broadway. We really consider this a transformational opportunity for the institution to increase the visibility and, allow us to, I think more importantly, have more space to conduct, community programs, educational programs, and also to give, this committee an update. We have introduced via Assembly Member Taylor legislation to rename the 157 Metro Station to 157-Hispanic Society, since now we're going to have, hopefully we will have so much of the Broadway frontage, then it makes sense that we would have the name of the station after us.
Right. And I see Indiana has her hand up, but that also reminds me that the building currently occupied by Boricua is the only building in the campus that has an accessible entrance from the street. So that would give the Hispanic Society a building where you can walk in or roll in directly from the street, no stairs.
Yes, absolutely.
Great,
Indiana?
yes, that's exactly what I was going to ask about was accessibility. And I remember one of the last presentations you had mentioned that some of the work that was in progress was to address accessibility. So I was just wondering if there was any update.
Absolutely. So I think since we came to this committee, Natalie and I were in front of the committee, we have put in place a bridge that connects the upper terrace to the north building, which is where the work is going to take place, because we have gallery spaces and there'll be a conservation studio, etc. But that is a fully accessible bridge. But however, having accessibility directly from Broadway into the space is critical, right? And we're hoping now that we'll be able to shift some of the activities that are taking place in the east building, which we haven't fully renovated yet, and that's sort of phase 3 now of all the work that we're doing. But we have a pop-up gallery, as you might be aware, and that, we would have, that is directly, the ADA accessibility for that is completely open with the purchase of, or having the Boricua building.
Great, thank you. But maybe actually just one quick follow-up. Is that information online?
Well, about which
The
information?
accessibility? Just like which pieces?
I don't think so. I mean, and Natalie, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, the building is accessible now through the ramp and through the lift that we have, and that's how we've made our main building accessible. And I'm sure Boricua, because until this is finalized, which is not, as far from, we're not able to really, publish it or discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
But I will say that since reopening after a pretty extensive period of being closed for major renovations, we made the commitment to only reopen to the public spaces that are step-free accessible. It's a quirky and charming system, because obviously landmarks would only allow certain options. So we do have what I affectionately call the Gremlins lady lift, getting you to that first level of the terrace, from which soon, if everything goes well, you'd be able to use that bridge that Cynthia was talking about to access the panel gallery in the north building. But for now, you would then take a second lift to our main floor. But we have not, if anybody remembers the old days, we have a whole lot of gallery space and a huge collection, but we have made that commitment to that this is kind of the new Hispanic Society. And so when Wayne was talking about the second bite of the apple here, so to speak, I like to think that the universe is waiting for the right people to be here to get that baton, to pick up that baton here. So we hope it happens, but the best way to learn about and have this make sense is to schedule your CB12 tour. I poked at Kiana a little bit to organize this. Come visit us, and we're happy to answer questions on site.
Awesome, thank you.
And in the end, I was going to point out that, and actually you were on the board at the time, we passed a resolution supporting the temporary, but I think it's temporary for like 10 years, accessibility work at the Audubon Terrace. So there is a ramp that gets you down to the lower terrace from Broadway. I think there's a little temporary, ramp or bridge that gets you into the east building. There is the lift that takes you from the lower terrace to the upper terrace. And then there are ramps that were built to get into the original Hispanic Society building and into the east building. So all of that work is complete. It's not online, but everything that we referenced in the resolution is done.
Thank you.
Questions, comments, thoughts?
Well, I just want to, like I always say, your museum is wonderful. I love it. I enjoyed visiting.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Eitan?
No questions here.
All right. Any questions or thought? Are you familiar with the Hispanic Society?
I've been there.
You haven't been there ever?
Oh, yeah. That,
Yeah.
Natalie, Cynthia, Amy, we have 3 people who you need to capture. Yes.
where is it?
Where is the Hispanic Society located?
So we are on Broadway between 155th and 156th Street.
Are you familiar with the Audubon Terrace complex? They have currently three of the buildings in the complex, and they are one of the original occupants from a century ago.
What are the hours?
What are your hours?
We are Thursday through Sunday, noon to 5 are the regular public hours. But if you make arrangements for a tour, it can be whenever you guys would like. We do school groups early morning so that the students can have the place to themselves and aren't fighting in the gallery spaces with the regular visitors, right? And it creates but we do public programming often Thursday evenings and on Saturday. Go to the events calendar. We do have programming this Saturday with a printmaking shop with 26 Uptown Arts, Marie Reynaldo Garcia Pantaleon. And then following the book presentation of the catalog for the historic Dominican Yorks at the Hispanic Society, which inaugurated 2 years ago, our series Arte en Alto Manhattan, featuring local Northern Manhattan artists.
Great. So if there's nothing further concerning or from Hispanic Society, I thank you for joining us. I thank you for giving us the update and look forward to seeing how this second bite at the apple progresses.
Thank you so much. We appreciate being included, and have a great evening. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
So the next presentation, actually more so as a discussion, is with Sean Rickenbacker, who is the director of the J. Max Bond Center for Urban Futures at City College. And Manhattan Community Board 12 completed a neighborhood planning and land use study about 2007, 2008. And we did that in collaboration with what was at that time what's called City College's Architecture Lab. And the Architecture Lab is the predecessor to what is now the J. Max Bond Center. So, that planning study is several years old. We are looking at updating it, but also the Bond Center is doing some interesting things for our neighbors to the south in CBs 9 and 10. And so we wanted to sort of touch base again with Sean and with his colleagues at the Bond Center to talk about what they're doing and how some of those efforts might be tailored for CB12, and also just to discuss in general what are some of our thoughts for updating. So Sean, I see that you're there, and also Alden.
Yeah.
If you could put your cameras on so we can see you, if that's possible.
Yep. Here we go.
How are you?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So, Wayne, thank you for the introduction, and thank you, the CB12 members, for the opportunity to share some of the Bond Center work and maybe engage in a discussion on how to best service some of the needs for the Land Use Committee at CB12. So I'm going to be joined by Alden Copley, who's one of the senior researchers at the Bond Center, one of the lead project persons on the Equity Development Index, which we'll give you a little bit of an introduction on. But maybe first to kind of give a little bit more history in addition to what Wayne has already offered. So yes, I think the college and the School of Architecture are quite proud of the work that Wayne refers to, done, I guess, almost 18, 20 years now. And that work, which I guess was brewing probably starting 2002, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of discussion and getting the appropriate individuals in place to contribute to that effort. Also had the pleasure of meeting and working with Wayne during the rezoning under City Councilman Ydanis Rodriguez, which we did a extensive report with several faculty members at the City College, not just in the School of Architecture, but also Colin Powell John Krinsky and Susanna Shallow, who's a resident of Community Board 12. So we've been working with you all, on and off for the past 5 years. COVID certainly produced a gap in that window, as it did with a lot of community organizations that we interface with. But as Wayne mentioned, many of the community boards, particularly land use committees, have similar issues, although they're quite unique depending on geographic location, density, character of the neighborhood, et cetera. And so in a similar fashion, we were approached by Community Board 10, who, with the support of their city council member at the time, and also additional support from other elected officials in Central Harlem, put out an RFP for a land use study, and with some funding provided by those same council members, and I think even some of the state senators in District 13, if I'm not mistaken, might have contributed to that effort. And in part, this was in preparation for a number of projects that were going to be under review by that land use committee and by the community at large under the ULURP process. And one of them was Lenox Terrace, which is a rather large development. And interestingly enough, its expansion and potential expansion had been studied by Max Bond's legacy firm. That was Davis Brody Bond, who was brought back. And I think this was sometime around 2018. So this is not that long ago. What that effectively developed was a rationale that the community board, and particularly the land use committee, should have a set of tools, or at least a guideline by which to evaluate these projects, of which Lenox Terrace was just one. There were several others that were stacking up. And I think a more heavily reported one that you all might be even familiar with is 145 on 145th Street, which has received a lot of press coverage and attention around that issue. And so the RFP, in terms of land use studies, were, again, seeking to address those realities at that particular moment in time. The Bond Center was asked to submit if we were interested, if it was something we can do. We took our time and conversed with some people down in City Council, Office of City Planning, and asked to what degree did were they still utilizing and focusing on the efficiency and usefulness of land use studies in relationship to the ULURP process. And there wasn't really a strong relationship unless a document pre-existed the effort.
You just froze.
Modern technology. Yeah. I think they call it.
I'll try shooting him a note on one of our channels here if he doesn't come back. Sean, we lost you for about 30 seconds there.
Okay, that's unfortunate. So I'm going to wrap up here, and hopefully Alden will have a little bit better of a signal. I apologize for that. But just to say that the efficiency of which the land use studies and the time that it takes to produce them, which can extend years, if not months in a rapid scenario, but years for others historically, we propose that we could produce a tool that would move as quickly as, let's say, the market does in terms of privately owned sites, where developers have at their disposal tools to accurately model and test out density models, mixed use models, development models at writ large in terms of what's possible in a matter of days, if not sooner. And so to try to produce equal footing and to also democratize some urban data that community boards and communities didn't necessarily have access to, we proposed helping to build this tool on their behalf as a kind of updated tool to be utilized similar to a land use study, but can be directed more specifically to the particular priorities of that community. So whether that be housing, environmental protocols, strain or stress on services, et cetera. Things that don't necessarily get attuned to the kind of legacy documents of, let's say, a land use study. So really, this was really an attempt to produce an evaluation tool that was on par with what private industry uses, not just for private sites, but then for public sites as well. So we interfaced with the land use committee, the former city council speaker's land use team as a collaborator on this project. And as Wayne already mentioned, CB9 and CB10, who helped fund the early stages of the research for this. So I'm going to hand it off to Alden, who can give a brief presentation and show some of the slides that pertain to what we've developed. And then maybe we can have a discussion and answer some questions at the end.
Yeah, and before you begin, I think, Patricia, you had a question if, public discussion was allowed. And yes, at a committee meeting, attendees, anyone is allowed to participate in the discussion. So if you're online and you have a question, just, raise your hand and, we'll allow you to get unmuted and, address whatever question you have.
Yep.
For some reason, the laptop would not allow me to answer you in the Q&A.
Okay. So again, I'll just introduce Alden Copley, who's a senior researcher at the Bond Center, and he'll give you a little bit more information on where we are with this tool.
Nice to meet everyone. Thank you for hosting us this evening. As Sean said, I've been working on this for a few years now, and happy to kind of give a quick walkthrough, looking at kind of what this tool is intended to do, how it's set up, and kind of where we are in the development process. So hopefully share my screen without too much fanfare here.
Are you able to share your screen, or do I need to give you permission?
I was able to click. Give it 1 sec here, and hopefully my internet plays along as well. Okay.
I just made you a co-host, so that should enhance your ability to share.
Okay. It looks like there we go.
There we are.
Great. So we call this the Equitable Development Index. The intention of this tool is to assist decision makers in the land use process to kind of quickly and efficiently be able to evaluate proposed developments based on their own priorities in land use development. And so as Sean alluded to, we've worked with other CBs and other kind of decision makers to understand kind of what's important to them in this land use process and in the ULURP process specifically. And so we workshop what kind of metrics are possible to look at, for one thing, in the land use process, what's really important to decision makers, and how we can leverage kind of the data that's available in environmental impact statements that are drafted as part of land use exception decisions, how we can leverage that data and make it kind of much more kind of palatable almost and easy to compare between projects. And so the basic way that this works is a new project is proposed. Basic specs of that project are pulled into the program and kind of laid out in the same way as every other project that we have in our catalog. The user, in this case, community boards or other decision makers, actually go through a kind of prioritization workshop, and they rank different elements of new developments in terms of their importance to them. And then, the specifications around the proposed project and the priorities selected by the user are then combined to generate scores on different categories of the buildings. And so that's kind of the basic flow of information, and it allows users to kind of look at several projects at once, compare them side to side, look at historic projects, compare them to an upcoming proposed project. So you can look at both kind of the raw specifications, but also how each project scores based on your own priorities. And so, the kind of background of this is, about a year and a half of actually kind of pretty manual research of looking at previous ULURP projects. Sorry, I know it's a little small there. It's a screenshot of a spreadsheet, so you got to bear with me there. But actually drilling down into various projects that have been approved, many that have actually been built, looking at kind of how the outcomes of those projects compared to their EISs and the kind of like stated impacts. We tested a lot of different ways of weighting certain elements and comparing certain elements to try to kind of minimize, kind of black box mystery outputs. And a big part of the tool is actually that you can drill down into the scores of a given project and understand why, say, one project is getting a 9 out of 10 on its housing score, while a different one is getting just a 4 out of 10 on its housing score. You can drill down into the specifications of the project to learn a little bit more about it. As I referred to earlier, the priorities are shaped by the user, and so users kind of create their own account. And so you can have individual kind of user where one person goes through, fills out their specifications and priorities, or you can actually have kind of a blended account. So what we've done in the past is a whole land use committee actually all engages with this survey, and then you get kind of this is the priority profile of this land use committee, or you could do it for even a larger group of constituents potentially, or a focus group, that kind of thing, to understand how different groups around the city might prioritize things. The basic output is kind of an overall score, and then you have a breakout into these kind of several kind of critical categories. These categories have changed over time based on feedback from some of our other partners on this stuff. One of our main constrictions is just what data is consistently available in EISs, because not all projects report back with significant enough impacts to give detailed, like, seeker kind of calculations about everything. And so we do have some restrictions about the things that we can and can't measure consistently, because we want to really keep the data as high quality as possible. So, sometimes we've had to have kind of tricky conversations with folks about, why we might not necessarily be able to touch on, impacts to infrastructure or, school capacity or something like that, because these things are not always something that can be touched on within this land use or the ULURP process. Again, we've run this on kind of previous projects and existing projects to kind of gut check the outputs. As of right now, we have a working prototype and a kind of a catalog of most of the like digitally available ULURP projects that have been processed in I think about the last 10 years. And so users are able to pull up those projects side by side, look at the scores, participate in the kind of priority workshopping. And again, as I mentioned, you've got this kind of drill down element where you can actually look at which factors are kind of driving scores in one direction or another. One of the recent updates is this, we're calling it kind of a market viability score based on feedback specifically from city council land use folks to try to give users a sense of how a given project is positioned in relation to kind of the way real estate markets tend to behave these days, which, you know, we don't always have the kind of, you know, we don't have 100% access to developers' books necessarily, but we can look at the specs of a project. We know what kind of going rents for different use types are. We know what the square footages of those use types are. We have rough ideas of what construction costs per square foot for different, you know, building types are. And from that, we can get a sense of kind of how likely something is to need, you know, kind of substantial, moderate or little kind of public subsidy to get across the line. Because that's often what we look at when we talk about affordable housing or other kinds of kind of community benefit space. Is often there is some kind of subsidy in the background that makes that possible, because we know that there's always kind of some trading happening in the background there. So what we are now working towards is a kind of much expanded kind of prime version of this that will also integrate kind of contextual GIS data, things like AMI levels and proximity to transit, kind of health indicators, potentially some flooding indicators, things like that, that help provide the user with a more full picture of what the needs of that specific site might be. Because right now, you know, the projects are reviewed kind of on their own or just in relation to other projects. Whereas in this updated version, we want to have it kind of geolocated and providing kind of a lot of information about the surrounding area as well, so folks can get a nice snapshot of course, you know, especially with community boards, these folks know their areas very well. But sometimes having it all in one place is really a useful kind of tool to help wrap your head around what is being proposed. And so, as I mentioned, we've been chipping away at this for a few years now. We kicked off in 2022, and kind of in earnest. And we did recently receive support from the Sloan Foundation to proceed with building out that full capacity. And we're in the process of kind of onboarding folks to begin that build and actually proceeding with outreach for potential users to solicit feedback and help build this thing to its kind of full capacity. And then Sean wanted to, obviously I brought up the Sloan thing, but Sean also had the opportunity to share this tool recently at the, what was it, Sean? Can you?
Yeah, no. So yeah,
Yeah,
I think this is where we'll sort of wrap things up. But the instrumental to the progress thus far has been certainly community boards 9 and 10, as well as the land use team at former Speaker Adrienne Adams, her office, who had been working very closely with us and gave us a lot of insight on some of the challenges that they face. So really some heart-to-heart conversations about how this tool could assist them, and in the same time, assist community board members. We did do an early presentation similar at a land use committee meeting for one of the other community boards, of which one of the presentations following us was a developer looking for an exception on a particular site, who I think was more than willing in a positive sense to engage with us, gave us some really positive feedback in terms of their ability to utilize this to enter into thoughtful conversations with the community if they knew their priorities ahead of time. So you can begin to see how this tool could serve diverse interests. So a community's interests obviously won't be necessarily the same as the developer. And I will also say that the community interests and developer interests may differ also from the elected officials' objectives. And in that capacity, that allows people to converse across the aisle in this sense with the same information, because we've encountered clear description from community boards and their land use committees in particular of numerous blind spots. The data that comes within an EIS is incredibly dense, as you know, can run several hundred pages. We've been fortunate enough to partner with the computer science department at City College. So we're using large language models to essentially retrieve that data that's buried in these EIS documents, which in and of itself is an enormous amount of legwork that may be unreasonable even for the most seasoned professionals to do, to be able to compare projects. So we think in part that's why the Sloan Foundation found value in this. I was asked to present this to the Mayor's Institute on City Design. And Sloan also feels that with the focus right now on New York, but there is interest and perhaps excitement beyond New York in terms of its flexibility, because we can look at any similar set of documents in that capacity. So just in terms of wrapping up, just to go back to where we started in terms of the entry point here, was that the industry, particularly real estate development, they're moving at breakneck speed with a set of tools that perhaps makes the contest a bit unfair, in my opinion. And so providing both city agencies, community boards, and communities themselves with a robust and public-facing tool that can help to level the information playing field, that can allow them to kind of very quickly assess a development project ahead of time, on time, or while it's in the process. And the flexibility to introduce a range of priorities to see how the ratings are affected allows them to now compare how their priorities impact the project itself. And sort of objective reasoning hopefully starts to set in at that point. And once again, using the tool to kind of leverage fruitful conversations about what a project may become or may not become. So we'd be thrilled to sort of include CB12 in the mix here. Like Wayne has already introduced, we have a bit of a history. Yes, we're fully familiar that CB12 has been rezoned, so there's a lot of new considerations on the table. But we feel very strongly about the tool's ability to address one site or multiple sites, to paint both broad pictures of what might come to a community, as well as the more singular focused picture of what might happen at a particular site of interest. But the tool handles both readily. So I'll wrap up there, and we'll be happy to take any questions and perhaps continue the conversation.
Sure. Well, thank you for, once again, agreeing to meet with us. There are three things that come to mind initially. One is so many of the conversations we have, not just at CB12, but in general, when it comes to discussing potential impacts of projects, seems to be so much speculation, and it would be great, ideal, pick the word that best fits, to be able to have some greater sense of what are the facts, what are the actual impacts that can be measured, because in many cases what we're really discussing is whether we like and favor or dislike and don't favor the proposal, and so the impacts are shaded by that. You mentioned the information that's in environmental and impact statements, and on that alone, I think CB12 would applaud having something to help us, because we just went through a BSA application for a school. The application itself was not complex. The EAS was 8,000 pages long, although a lot of that were attachments, but the ES itself was over 300 pages long. And I attended the initial public hearing that BSA had for that, and even their staff had some difficulty assessing where they could find the data they were looking for in that document. So a tool that can pull that together and help folks understand what it means, I think would be amazing. And I know that at the executive committee level here, we're talking about hiring consultants to help us do that. So if there's a tool that allows us to put a project in there or put the EAS in there and have it summarized, that would be great. But the other thing I find, and I'd like you to elaborate upon, is you mentioned that in your conversations with, I guess, folks at city planning, they're not paying as much attention to traditional planning studies as they used to. And I guess the question is, why is that, and what are they paying attention to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are a couple of answers to this, and this is speculation because I don't work for them. I only have conversed with them. But the speed at which development is progressing at this particular juncture, I can give you an example with the South Brooklyn terminal, co-sponsored by Economic Development Corporation, which started out with community board meetings just to kind of discuss the aspirations and possibilities of the project. And what that unleashed were obviously community concerns about both programming, building typologies, amounts of housing, because the complexity is just, for something of that scale, and this can be attached to a singular site as well for a singular building, but the complexities range. And to your point, the amount of data that comes to support these projects, right? Whether you're talking about stress on infrastructure, traffic, amounts of housing, which then come with considerations of schools and so forth. So when you look at a traditional land use study, there is nothing on paper that documents South Brooklyn transforming into a new economic hub. Just no one thought of it. That wasn't part of the zoning mandate, and so there's nothing to kind of refer to. The only thing to refer to is what the consultants that EDC hires, which are architects and planners, to put this together, to put the opportunity in front of the community for evaluation. But once again, I think the shortcoming is that there's no instruction on how to evaluate this. So to your point, we're sticking with consistent criteria that is associated with the EIS that generally does not change from project to project. So it produces an equal playing field for not only analysis and review, but also from project to project to project. We find that many projects that come up, particularly in ULURP, are not simply housing. There might be mixed use component. There's a community component. There's the kind of impact on CO2 emissions. There's a whole host of information that the tool even provides some basic definitions of, so that the user can be informed. So I think what city planning now understands is that unless they're willing to produce the land use study, which they generally don't have time to do because it takes an enormous amount of time, they subcontract it out. And what that land use study looks like is a formal proposal produced by the consultants, the architects, the engineers, landscape architects, of the possibility for which the community is reviewing. So we've done some homework to kind of examine the most recent production of land use studies. There's not many. Feasibility studies seem to be replacing them. They do some of the same work without the kind of earmarking, the kind of singular sort of final solution. I think the tools that I referred to that the development world uses can model various programs, size, and scale quite rapidly. And so in a similar vein, we thought that the flexibility of remodeling the tools specs, housing, community, et cetera, was fundamentally more useful than a static document that may not be able to address those immediate changes that happen in minutes sometimes as people are looking for various scenarios by which to build out their hopes for a project.
I also just wanted to kind of double down on what you mentioned about BSA and community boards. You know, BSA especially is about to become a pretty serious, not that they haven't already been, but they're about to get leaned on much more heavily with some of the updated approval processes and things like that. And so we actually are pushing an expedited development timeline for our own for this project specifically to try to get it in front of folks sooner rather than later, because we do anticipate a pretty serious kind of influx in the next 6 months here with these updated processes, especially for BSA and community boards especially. So that is very much on our radar, and we feel a little bit of urgency around this to help make this stuff as legible as possible. So
yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I just have one main question, which is that you're talking about developing this tool as a whole, which you guys are working on and have been working on since 2022. So what does it mean when a specific community board then comes and opts into that tool? Like, what are you doing? Is that now applying that tool and doing research on the ground in that specific community district, or what is it?
No, so we would like as many kind of user types and users as possible for this thing. So essentially onboarding a new user, you know, in the kind of final version of this will be they create an account, they engage with the prioritization kind of worksheet, and then they're able to pull up, you know, the catalog of EISs and review different projects based on their priorities. And so right now, you know, in our stage currently, we're going to be working with partners to help shape this final version of it, like literally looking at the UX, like the design of it, what is most helpful for explaining some of the elements that are being considered, and really kind of honing it for as broad a range of user types as possible. Because of course, you know, digital tools, you know, there's a range of literacy around that, there's a range of comfort around that, and we want to really hone that element of it. But as far as we're concerned, you know, the goal is to make a useful tool for decision makers. And so for a new community board to come on is wonderful, really. And it's designed to have those different users, and you know, early engagement with it at this stage means, you know, providing feedback on what that design looks like, and what kind of elements of it are really useful to be able to see, you know, with one click, and what's making sense, what isn't, and how you know, one of the biggest questions we have in this process is, ensuring that when folks engage with the prioritization kind of worksheet, that they are getting scores and outputs that are logical to them. We want folks to be able to draw a clear line between the kind of decisions that they've made in that process and the scores and the outputs that they're seeing, so that there's they can see that relationship, and they feel like this thing is really reflecting their interests and their concerns. And so in this stage, the more different eyes we can get on it to give that kind of feedback, the better. But once it's rolled out, it's not going to be, I think, fully publicly available, but it will certainly be kind of a open enrollment for any decision makers who want to engage with this tool and use it for their own areas. That kind of thing. So
that's great. And so I think when there is a new development, right? So how is all the information about that development getting added to the system? Is that through public filings? Is that through research that you all are doing? How does that work?
So do you want to, Sean? Or
there's two scenarios. I think Olin and I are going to offer two relevant answers to this. One is, so in the last slide in the Mayor's Institute, for instance, EDC informed me, as well as the former speaker's land use team, that they were receiving proposals for review, and they would seek permission to share some of the data around those projects that hasn't gone public yet, if they thought the tool could be of assistance to them. So that's one answer, right? So that's to answer how some projects that might be in the works but are not yet fully public might enter into this, into the use of this system. So that's one answer there. I think Alden is going to provide the answer with respect to upcoming projects and how quickly the updated EISs are uploaded for public use and dissemination.
Yeah, so we are building into this version of it. We are going to have a tracker that watches the public posting site and automatically pulls it, parses it, and makes that data available as we kind of call we call projects kind of catalog entries, because we consider kind of both the backlog and the live updated log kind of a catalog of projects. And so we are going to be building out something that kind of watches for new projects to be posted, and then parses the appropriate information. We also will be kind of tracking those projects and watching that upload portal as new one come in, because there are certainly complicated projects, contentious projects. You can have many versions. And so we actually want to be able to have an archive of those versions as well, so that you can say, like, well, what did V2 of 145 look like versus, V6, and put those side by side, and like, did we go backwards here? Are we in the same? Did we come back to V1? Right. So an automated tracker. We've got plenty of legwork to do to confirm that, kind of the automatic parts of this are running with a really high level of accuracy and consistency, because we don't want to be mishandling any of this, but we've got a pretty high threshold for accuracy on that stuff. So
thank you.
We feel good about moving forward on that. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim has a question, but if I could go back to Ethan's first question, what I took away from the answer is when a new client comes on board, that client will tell you or whomever they're working with what are their priorities, what is it they want to look at, and what's most important. And so although you might have multiple community boards that are clients, CB12's priorities can be very different from CB9.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like we're customizing what is being looked at and what's being considered important.
Right.
Yeah. So essentially, the way you can picture it is you'd be able to select between several projects that you wanted to review. And you would actually have another element where you could specify, I want to look through the eyes of CB12. And so most users would likely keep their kind of priority profile private, but there may be some cases, like potentially, I think land use boards who want, as Sean referenced, a developer to be able to kind of see what CB12 is seeing, could actually like access this thing and say, oh, what kind of a score is my project getting from CB12 right now? And so there would actually potentially be some like publicly available profiles that could be considered. But no, so you would the profiles are kept distinct, and you would select kind of who you want to view as, so that they aren't getting blended together or confused or things like that.
Right.
So.
Right. And I think also the Wayne, to your point, some community boards who are intent on being proactive as opposed to reactive are literally examining possibilities of initiating their own rezoning or special districts, right? And the only way to do that is to, sort of corral a certain area or district and sort of look at that in terms of its possibility, in terms of individual sites, collective sites. We know that the former Manhattan Borough president put together a document identifying all of the city-owned sites throughout the city that could be possible development sites, primarily for housing. And in the end, we realized that the number of publicly owned sites that may not change hands, finding their way somehow into the private market or public-private partnerships are pretty small, and their development might take some time. And so I think what we're seeing is that in this kind of proactive stance, they're asking, community boards in particular and communities are asking some pretty profound questions of these individual sites and opportunities and what they might mean and what the trade-offs are, scale versus density scenarios. We can go down the list, which is quite extensive. Affordability obviously is baked into that, parking requirements, strain on infrastructure and so on. So we think, the uses are quite broad. It's not always about dealing with a specific set of projects for review, but it could very well be about a selective set of sites that might open up an opportunity for that community and community board to enter into discussions ahead of time with city planning in terms of what a rezoning might look like that's spearheaded by the community board itself, right? And I think there's a couple of models out there of that having already taken place and being seriously looked at and under review. So,
Jim?
Thank you. I'm gonna make a bunch of statements, and it sounds like a lot of them are concerns. You'll hear what I have to say. Let me begin by saying I am just thrilled with, I think you presented this to us once before, and it sounds even better now. So that's how I want to start. The other piece of background that might help is I've been doing this so long, I taught computer science before it was even called computer science. So I have, and in fact, my background began at the City College with a free course in Fortran, which they gave because they got a new computer and they wanted lots of people using it. So they trained a lot of people so that stuff would be happening, because if they had this computer just sitting there, it would have looked rather embarrassing. So, but again, this was a free course in Fortran, and it was wonderful. So, and it started me on this whole thing. So the other thing in my preface is that I think most of the things that I consider important are things you've already talked about. And so I think, I'm not going to come up with anything that you haven't already addressed. But I think it's important that some of these things should be highlighted. So let's start. One of the things I taught when I taught computer science is that the kids actually wrote software, of course. That the software had to be user friendly. And I would test their software and act like a total dope, and it just threw me out. I would ask you about that. So, but this is a very, very important feature, and you've mentioned that in terms of the different levels of literacy that people have, but you want the system to be as open as possible, meaning that as many possible as possible will be able to use it without particularly much training. So that's a very high priority, but everything I'm going to say you already understood, but we'll go on anyway. The second thing is you're going to use, which is a valid tool, versions of the large language model. Now, the thing you're aware of, and this came up in what you discussed also, some versions of the large language model, which is what all the AI is based on, make things up. And you talked about the accuracy of stuff. So if you give it an IES to look at, you're liable to get, things that aren't even in it. But you're, again, fully aware of this. But again, it's something that we as a board, and I in particular, because I've lived through this, have to stress. And now I'm sort of going on the side because I think Wayne made a good point, and obviously I agree with my colleagues. I got the sense with the EIS that Wayne was talking about that they almost made it horrendously long, and I think it really didn't even have a good table of contents. You couldn't find anything that they could actually obscure things. And of course, they shouldn't do that. And again, maybe they didn't do that, but that was sort of the effect. And because you have, software that will do the looking, and then you will look at what it looked at, all that. I think that's extremely important, because if we could have thrown it into a piece of software that would produce a summary, and we knew, for example, if the summary was correct, that would have made life much easier for us. Because this concern, the school they want to build at the intersection of 181st Street and Broadway, and that's really no place for a school, because it's like one of the most highly trafficked things in all of Community Board 12. And yet trying to find out what they had figured out or hadn't looked at, and that was so. And because that's part of the user friendliness also. I wanted to editorialize about how one can cynically create an EIS that's essentially useless. But again, your tool, because it will be able to read it and then help us, that's already a big advantage. And the other thing, which I think you already answered, is the user, when they come to your system, they will create their own priority profile. So some user might think they want more of this and less of that. And I believe that's the case. And I think that's actually the key to what you were discussing, because that profile would allow you to look from Community Board 12's point of view, because you just look at things through that profile. And somehow before you started, I had the idea that, some academics actually do this. They decide this is the profile and there you are. And we all know that's not good. But again, the user decides on the profile, and there they might need a little hand holding. But again, from what I hear, the tool you're working on sounds really magnificent. It would make, and the other point you made, just to further tell you how good you are, is that if we all have this common set of facts, which is, everyone would have to agree that your tool has all the right facts, but that makes talking past one another and all this other foolishness much less likely to occur. So again, I congratulate you on what you have done. I think so far as we can get involved with this, will be very good, and, I believe I've run out of my list. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, no, thank you. And really, yeah, so really appreciate the comments and observations. The more we hear this, the more information that we have, we're able to absorb that and be responsive in terms of how the tool sort of operates. So, again, Wayne knows this already. We'd love to have you guys as a identified partner. I think, in fact, our relationship with the other community boards and the city agencies was of critical importance for Sloan. So, the years of interfacing with the agencies and communities was tremendously helpful in that regard. So, the few $100,000 that's been spent thus far, to your point, is to assure the high level of accuracy. So I think we're above the 95 percentile at this rate in terms of what we've been able to prototype consistently. So we're pretty confident that we will strike even higher as we now build this out and roll it out for piloting and testing in that capacity. But really appreciate your comments. And yeah, I mean, certainly for the Bond Center in general, the data that helps communities realize their aspirations needs to be democratized, and this is part of that effort to do just that. So.
I just have one or two very short comments. Just to tell you how long I've been around. At one point, Max Bond worked with us for the development of new stuff for the zoning of the Columbia area. So I got to work with him. I have enormous respect for him. And the fact that your organization being that's really quite something.
That's awesome to know, and we like to believe if Max was still with us, he'd be doing similar work. So,
well, I think so because I got wonderful vibes from him. And the other thing, during my old time computer science hat, we actually want better than accuracy.
99.9.
Well, it doesn't have to be good as we used to be, but 95. There's still 1 out of 20 wiggle room. That's not good.
Yeah. Patricia?
We're getting to 99. Yeah.
I won't demand 100. That's all.
Hi, Patricia.
Oh, awesome. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the chance to ask my question. As I alluded to in the chat, I have a question about a construction project that's happening on 165th between Edgecombe and Amsterdam Ave. I live at the corner of Edgecombe and 165th, so this is literally in my backyard. And I've had a really hard time finding information on what's happening there. I'm sure that you guys know that there's a New York Presbyterian parking lot that is on the land there about halfway through the block. And it's been walled off by like construction barriers over the last week or so, and construction has started there. And it appears just through my research that there may be a 28-story residential building going up that is for Columbia medical students. So I just wanted to try to get some more information on if that is right, what exactly is happening there. And I do have a few comments, but I'll stop here and just see, perhaps if that is true, that it is a 28-story residential building.
I would say that question isn't directly related to this conversation, but I was thinking, how could we take that project and put it in this tool and see what the impacts are? The parking lot is leased by, actually it used to be leased by the hospital and now it is leased by Columbia for parking. I saw 2 articles about the development. I don't recall if it is a 27-story. I don't know if it's that tall. But the thing that I engaged with Columbia on is, I think on 2 occasions, they pointed out that the information in the article is incorrect, that it is not for Columbia medical students. I think what the developer is doing is they're building a building under a program that allows for dormitory type uses, and they are citing Columbia Medical as a potential client, but they do not actually have any agreement or relationship with Columbia Medical, and they could just as easily have students from Yeshiva or NYU there. But this is all kind of second-hand information. That project is not something that has come to the community board. I mean, they're not looking for any discretionary actions. They're not looking to change zoning or anything. So there isn't anything they have to come to us for. And it's only because Columbia Medical was mentioned in the two different articles that we reached out to Columbia and say, you know, what's going on there. And that's how I've come to understand that it is not for them. I mean, yes, Columbia Medical has students, and those students could potentially, you know, rent there, but it's not as if there is an MOU or a master lease between Columbia Medical and the developer to do this. There's a you know, a program that allows for that density. And the reason why the building is as tall as it is given the zoning in the area, which is R72, which is the zoning in most of Washington Heights and Inwood. That's a medium density, which allows for whatever the size of your site, you can build, I think, 3.44 times the size of that as a residential building. Or if you were to agree to certain restrictions in what's called quality house, you could build up to 4 times the site size. So if it's a 10,000 square foot site, you could build up to 40,000 square feet, but more likely, you know, 34,400. However, dormitories and things like that are considered community facility uses. And under the R72 zoning, the density allowed, I believe, is 6.02. So it's a bigger building. That's why, you know, it is as tall as it is, because there's more density. But it's for that, you know, sort of dormitory student housing use. If it were strictly a residential building, affordable housing or market rate, it would probably be 2/3 the size. But in terms of, you know, who it's actually for, we don't have that information. I think one of the things we've asked the office to do is to try to reach out to the developer and, you know, get some more information. There are projects that are presented to the community board, even if there's no ask, just so that we know what the deal is. So maybe we can get some more information. And if we get that, it will certainly be on the agenda and you can join in.
I see. Okay. So I'm so sorry, Sean and Alden, for jumping in on your presentation. I thought this was just sort of general.
Perfectly fine. Yeah, no, it clarifies a point that often comes up. And not that you were suggesting this at all, but we want to make it clear to everyone that the tool itself is not necessarily a magic bullet to kind of uncover the details of any and all projects. In particular, as of right projects have no obligation to report anything to anyone in that capacity except for its own immediate shareholders. And so there are projects that this tool will ultimately not be able to address. But to Wayne's point, if they do seek to engage the community board and the land use committee and the housing or housing committee, and the project has some specifications that those developers are willing to share, the tool can still be utilized in that capacity. Doesn't actually have to have a hard copy EIS report to pull in some of the relevant data to do some general comparisons. Simply won't be as a robust analysis because there will be some data points that are not there. So there will be some differences, but you know, we realize that there are some developers who would perhaps benefit from and be open to running their own projects through the tool with their set of priorities as a means of starting a conversation.
Did I see your hand, Jim?
Can I jump back in and just ask who I should? I have so many concerns about this building. Is there a better venue for me to?
You should reach out directly to our district manager,
Okay.
Kiana Diaz. She is the district manager for Manhattan Community Board 12. And before she was the district manager for CB12, she was a staffer for council member Carmen De La Rosa and worked tirelessly. So she would be a good person to reach out to. And if you call the office, which is 212
Mhm.
568 8500.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And again, apologies, Sean. This tool sounds really great.
The only comment I was gonna make, and again, it's another compliment to you guys, is that, your tool sounds open enough, so provided a and, as you pointed out, the richer amount of data, array of data, whatever you wanna call it, that the developer voluntarily provides to your tool, the better the analysis can be. And, because once again, you've demonstrated this flexibility that one would hope it has, and apparently it has it. So once again, I compliment you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you again. Thank you
Appreciate
again.
that.
Yeah.
And I will say, Sean will confirm my skepticism of LLMs and their performance and their reliability. So I have kind of pushed on that specific element at every opportunity skeptically. It is coming around, but we do also have a kind of secondary process where we actually run seeker calculations. We kind of reverse engineer the outputs that the EIS provides, because they're all produced based on kind of specifications from spare me the acronym right now, but CEQR kind of standards. And so we also kind of reverse engineer those standards based on what, the basic specifications we have about the buildings, to confirm that some of the more kind of complicated elements like emissions or other kind of fuzzier impacts that are like where the data is kind of a step or two removed from just the basic specifications of the building. And so we do kind of reverse engineer to get a check on that stuff. And it also helps us in cases where it's not directly reported because they found kind of like minimal impact in their EAS. We kind of run the calculation anyway and just and implement that as well. So we do check it a couple different ways in the capacity that we can. So it's on our radar for sure, and really appreciate the feedback. Yeah.
Right. So we do have another discussion we need to get to, but before we leave you or let you go, I'm just wondering sort of what's next and what's next with CB12 engaging with you to be part of this process?
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah. So we were literally just awarded the Sloan Foundation grant about a month and a half ago, so about 6 weeks ago. And we are in the process of building out a larger partner group who become testers and help co-design the actual priority listings. And so, as I mentioned, we would certainly send to you, Wayne, a kind of document that explains the partner relationship and what would be expected in terms of how you would facilitate collaborating on the tool, which would include these particular priorities for just your district, and a key number of members who would participate in the piloting process, of which, and I think you might have met Lizzie McWillie, the associate director, who's managing the interface between partners for this aspect of the work. So we have a set of boilerplate documents for that role. We can share that with you for review, and then hopefully reconnect in September when you guys come back for your next meeting following the summer, and hopefully reach an agreement to have you participate.
Great, great. So I want to once again thank you, Sean. Thank you, Alden, for joining us. Look forward to receiving that information and to continuing this conversation.
Great. Great. Thank you,
Thank all
guys.
for your time. Yeah, take
Have a
care.
great evening. Bye.
So the next conversation, and actually I was not at the general meeting. So this is all new to me. I was not at the general meeting last month. So I got an email from Matthew concerning the discussion of the presentation, a briefing that was done at the general meeting on for the Overlook Greenway Initiative. And what's interesting is normally my email will reject any email that comes for the first time. It goes to spam folder. Your email did not go to my spam folder. It actually went to my inbox. So, give us a sense of what you are, what's the problem? What are you trying to, address? And, what are you looking for the community board to do?
I didn't know the format of this meeting, so I wrote, I have prepared a brief speech.
Sure. And you might want to speak a little louder so the owl can hear you. You can come to the table too.
Stand thing is the microphone.
Howard. All right.
Sit down.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you very much for accommodating the Overlook Greenway project on tonight's agenda. My name is Matthew Fleischman, and I'm joined tonight by my fellow project coordinators, Judy Graff, Shannon Quitt, and Jonathan Hill. We are here to brief you on a community-driven stewardship initiative focused on 6 underutilized private parcels along Overlook Terrace and Fort Washington Avenue. As you can see from the packets we've distributed, these steep rocky slopes suffer from severe neglect, chronic illegal dumping, drug use, and hazardous forestry. And we also have prepared some of the same images in larger format that Judy has published. Our long-term goal is to work with the current landowners to voluntarily transition these municipal liabilities into a protected, community-managed native plant and bird corridor. To make this a realistic win-win for the owners, our team has built a robust business case rooted in land use mechanics. As detailed in the packet dossier, we hope to leverage incentives like the New York State Conservation Easement Tax Credit, local property tax reductions through tax certiorari petitions, and potential monetization of transfer of development rights or air rights. However, given that many of the adjacent properties are already developed, we want to look directly to this committee's land use expertise. We want to definitively clarify the current zoning designations for these target DBL numbers, explore if partitioning is legally viable, and determine whether an air rights transfer is a practical incentive on these specific blocks. Our ask tonight is for your structural guidance in navigating NYC land records so we can precisely identify the ownership entities. And before the board recesses for the summer, we hope to establish a partnership with you and local leadership to initiate formal professional outreach to these owners. Thank you for your time. We appreciate any questions or guidance you may have.
Great.
Sure.
Or you could email it to us.
Yeah, you can send it to you, but now
Sure. So for some reason, I cannot get to the pictures that you sent because there we are. Okay.
That's what we hope to look like. So this is a street view map. There's also a lot map. And
This is the lot map right here.
that's the lot map
Yeah,
also.
here, maybe this is.
And I think they have it as well on their slides. So actually, if you go back to the map, that's a useful, or this one too, yeah.
That,
Yeah, so what we're talking about is, I can also go up
sure.
and show. We're talking about is Overlook Terrace. So this street right here that goes from 184th Street to 190th Street. And the target properties would be lot 350, which is highlighted, which is a big space. Lot 46, which is this strip along the street. Lot 400 and 406, which we believe are owned by the same entity. And these are much smaller space. You see the building footprints almost come up to the street, but there is significant space there that's just unused in a sloped area that could be utilized. Also, lot 46 is adjacent to lot 36 and 39, two buildings up on Fort Washington, or Fort Washington Avenue. And I'm assuming that this lot down below, so if you're familiar with the area,
Yes.
Fort Washington is a higher
Much
elevation.
higher.
And so this area here, we believe, I believe is partitioned between these two entities. So this property owner and this property owner. So this is a building, 55 Overlook, which is on Overlook Terrace, and these two buildings.
What is the source of that map?
This is the New York City zoning.
Okay, so based upon that map, that little narrow strip is part of lot 46.
Right, but
Looks like it.
there's also, again, the building footprints
Mm-hmm.
these buildings sort of have their backyard shared with this space.
Yeah.
And the building footprints do not go up to the property, to the lot line. So I would assume that there is some sort of like, I don't know if there's a marker there, but that there is actually a shared space.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
So one of the first things that I would suggest is, are you familiar with Zola?
Yes.
So I would go to Zola and I would put in each of those block and lots and pull up the information, because it will give you the legal map, but also typically the owner is not shown, but if you click on show owner, it will tell you who owns that. But I would print out the information from Zola for each of those sites to tell you who the legal owner is, what the legal, boundaries are. The zoning is pretty straightforward. Actually, Zola will also give you what the zoning is, and I'm pretty certain that in that area, everything should be R7 too, because I think the R8 stops at the George Washington Bridge.
Okay.
But I mean, you can get a tremendous amount of, information on the ownership and the zoning by going to Zola and, printing out the various maps that are there. I did read through the attachments to your email, and I think, it would be useful to, further flesh out, that concept. And also you want to discuss this with our Parks and Recreation Committee, because if the idea is to create, sort of a open public land that kind of falls within there, but, it's not unusual for committees to coordinate because there's crossover. But the other thing that came to mind is the idea of having the transfer of development rights, which is a great idea, but you get varying responses, because I can hear folks saying, oh, that means you're going to allow some other site to be bigger. Now, transfer of air rights have been used to preserve historic buildings and churches and theaters. And the whole idea is, you can move it to an adjacent site. But, sometimes the reaction is so, I'm not saying knee jerk, but sometimes the reaction is kind of like folks want to shrink wrap, development, and they don't want anything to be bigger. So the question is, what is the impact? And like, Sean should still be here. What is the impact if you were to, transfer the development rights to the adjacent sites, or would you create or ask city plan to create a special zoning district that would allow you to transfer the development rights more broadly, perhaps to Broadway, which is a wider street? Because typically the transfer development rights, it can only be to an adjacent site. And as it is, Fort Washington has a certain scale, and how much bigger do you want to get? Whereas if you look at Broadway, which is wider and has greater potential, so there are a lot of things you'd want to consider. But I think actually, some of the things we're talking about, I mean, if we had access to the tool that Sean was talking about, you could plug it and say, what happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? And what are the impacts?
I had a similar knee-jerk reaction when I came across the idea of transferring air rights, and then I read a little bit further and understood what you just explained. I mean, essentially, what I've been looking for is the most incentive for the property owners, because other people have. If you bring up some of these other slides that show the properties, you'll see this one, for example. So this is the property, that long narrow strip in lot 46, and you can see there's decades of trash in here, and people use it. People are afraid to walk down this side of the street, so they walk down the other side. There's drug use. There's rats, and people in the past in this neighborhood have approached the building and the community board to try to do something about it. But my idea is really to go with the carrot than the stick. And so I try to identify as many incentives as possible to approach the landowners and say, this is what's in it for you.
Right.
And what we're hoping that it could look like, if you notice in this picture up here, the adjacent property to lot 46 or 55 Overlook is what's called, it's a cliffside garden behind the Birch Elementary School on Fort Washington that is referred to as the Meadow on Overlook. And my project coordinator here, Judy Graff, is the project coordinator there. So this is what it does look like, and this is what it could look like.
Right. And I would say two things. I mentioned to Patricia that she should contact the district manager, because there are some things that don't need a committee action. Private property owners are supposed to maintain their property. So if there is, trash built up or things like that, the district manager can reach out to them or can reach out to sanitation or whomever is responsible for enforcing that, and, have them get in touch and follow through. And on a monthly basis, our district manager has what's called a district service cabinet meeting with the various city agencies to talk about what's happening with that. So we've had other sites where, they were just, trash heaps. And, we've had sanitation, focus on, you cannot allow that, even though it's a vacant site, you can allow the private property owner to keep it like that. And so I would also identify these sites to Kiana and say that, even if there's nothing built there, and in some cases, the topography may not allow for that, or
That's the issue.
or based upon the density, they may already have built the most you can build. They built it on the most buildable part, but whatever the case is, it cannot be a dump.
Right.
But that's the one thing. But I also love the idea of coming with the carrots, because let's say if you can't build on that, would you object to having some kind of a license agreement to allow it to be, a community garden or this, that, and the other? So it's still your property, but you are allowing for some kind of use of it that is going to beautify the area, since you can't build on it, or you don't have plans to build on it now.
Yeah, that is the goal, which is why we haven't gone to this, which is why I feel like talking about approaching the property owners, saying that you have to clean this up is sort of a last resort for me. I would love to have a sit down with Kiana. I've been in contact with Steve Simon, and he's hoping
Who used to be on this committee.
and he is very interested in the project. He's hoping to do a site walk with us on Saturday. And he also said that he's interested in this idea of a of a conservation easement. And that would be one of the ultimate goals here. So I think that I actually have identified some of the property owners. Like I said, I've heard rumors that some of these are partitioned, but it didn't are partitioned already and owned by different owners, but it didn't appear that way on the tax maps.
You gotta be careful of rumors.
Yeah, I thought so too. And this one is, so this is, so this one also, these buildings are the buildings up in Fort Washington. And so I'm thinking that, and you see this is sort of the backyard between the buildings on Fort Washington and the side yard from the building down the street there. So it seems that we would have to approach all these buildings at once, and I would think that there's a line running a property line.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see, you know, where the actual property line is, because
So
you
this
know.
is the largest property
Yeah.
there. And again, I've heard rumors over the years, you know, what the owners want to do there, what they try to do there. And it doesn't appear that it's zoned for anything other than residential.
If it's R72, it's residential or community facility. Community facility, it could be a library, it could be a museum, could be a church, could be a school. I mean, but it's, you know, it's not commercial or retail.
Right. And so again, same idea with this property. This whole block of buildings is owned by the same entity, and they sort of come through here every few years and have a
Weed whacker?
a company. Just, it's huge, it's massive. So they have a company with a big machine that comes and just clears everything. And you know, what we're proposing is not only do they not have to do that, but people, you know, community members who would actively maintain it with no liability and no cost to them, but also, you know, there might be tax incentives as well.
The other thing is, and I believe I mentioned it, you know, given the size of the lot and given the size of the existing buildings, under the current zoning, they may not be able to build anymore. And there was an interesting article in the New York Times decades ago, but we've talked about it in many cases where the buildings in many neighborhoods predate the 1961 zoning, and they are in some cases bigger or taller or denser than that's permitted now. And so I'm looking at these sort of 1930s, 40s buildings, which are pretty dense, and you know, they may be denser than is permitted in the current zoning. So even though there's more land there, they may not be able to build more, but that's all speculation because you would need to do a zoning calculation. But I mean, I live in a building that you could not build today.
How could we do that zoning calculation?
You know, if you confirm the zoning, actually, when you go to Zola, if it says it's R72, then you know what that is. You can go to City Planning's website to find that. But Zola will also tell you the square footage of the building.
Okay.
So if the lot is 10,000 square feet and the building is 50,000 square feet and you can only build 4 times, it's already 10,000 square feet bigger than you can build today. So once again, if that limits what can be done as of right, given current zoning, if there was some, you know, interesting, beneficial idea that the owners and the community and the city planning thought was great, you can always go for a rezoning that would allow for additional density to facilitate that. But that's why I said there's a lot of, you know, homework that needs to be done to look at what is proposed. If it's just open land, you don't have to build anything. But if there's a proposal to build more, the first thing you need to do see is there unbuilt development rights there? I mean, you're talking about transferring development rights, but are there any to transfer? I'm sorry.
You went first last. Yeah. I know this area very well because I go down those steps all the time. And there's a step street there.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, right. Now, and these are just assumptions that I have. I would think that the buildings at the top of the hill don't own this land.
That's right.
It's owned by other people. And I would think the main disincentive, which was true by the subway station further south, that the rock that they took is this rock. Because they're gonna have to build, getting rid of the rock is extremely expensive, so whatever they build would have to be on top of the rock. So I think that the rock is the main disincentive for their doing anything. But, and I think, you know, we're all thinking about the same thing. The basic question is, you know, why are the owners behaving as they are? Because they have this land they presumably to build on and they've chosen not to. And at some point, you know, in your discussion with the owners who you can reach out to on surface, you know, all this will become clear. And again, if we had Sean's tool, this would be magical. And I think that what I presume you're ultimately going to propose to the owners is basically what Wayne alluded to, and I'm sure everyone's thinking of it. If this became this greenway or whatever, someone would take care of it for them. Someone would clean it for them. They wouldn't get fines anymore. They wouldn't have to call in this company to do whatever. And, you know, it sounds like something that, well, God, you like this. It sounds like something that a reasonable owner might go for. And not everyone on this planet Earth is reasonable. But again, it sounds like what you're offering, and let's just stick to this one apparent big lot that may or may not be subdivided. If that became an amenity, and again, if they didn't have to clean it, and then as you sort of alluded to, there may be incentives for their agreeing to do this. I think that this could be a wonderful thing, and then obviously inherent in this whole process, what is created is if and when they decide they want to build a building, they can just build their building. It's sort of like a community garden.
Right.
You know, it wouldn't, well, in order to turn it into parkland and among other things, the city would have to buy it.
Is that viable? Is that a viable?
Well,
I doubt it, but
there's a difference between formally turning it into city parkland and having a license agreement with a private owner that allows it to be used for something. And I think the latter is less involved and more
it's much
achievable than saying to the city, you know, go spend money and buy that land. Because they have other priorities.
Yes.
They you know, they may not, I mean, they ultimately, you know, right now the economy is sort of weird for this. But at some point they may want to do something. And then so it would be vaguely analogous to these community gardens that exist on, you know, property that then a landlord can come back. But in the meantime, and so if I were a reasonable owner and wasn't going to build anything, you know, this sounds like a, you know, wonderful. And of course, the other advantage, which doesn't really ever hurt anyone, is if they are part of this process, they will be looked upon well by the community. This is a good thing too. And, you know, it has, I mean, it is very rocky, you know, probably people can't go climbing all over the rocks and fall down. So we don't want that.
We don't want that.
Right. But I think if it were, you know, real beautiful green space until they wanted to do something with it and they went along with it, it'd be absolutely grand idea. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, no, thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate it. It's a good idea. I'm wondering, like, this is a huge area and it's very heavy, like you noted. So just to get to this space, like before it could be maintained by volunteers or anything like that, just to get to the space where you know, you're at a place where it's, you know, usable kind of greenway land is probably very expensive, right? I mean, I would imagine, you know, you would need real clearing out of this area. You probably need to, you know, cordon off areas that are more dangerous, like the most hilly parts of this. Is that something that you guys have thought about, estimated, seen like how you would go about that? Or am I just totally off
It's
base?
a little bit beyond where we're at right now, which is why I haven't mentioned it, but I can
I just,
field that question.
so I've been, the coordinator for the rehabilitation of the Birch School backyard. And again, this was unusable space and, basically what won them over was we came and we said, we'll do it for you. Okay, and we have asked them for, oh, I've been involved in this for 9 years. And in those 9 years, we've asked them for a new hose. And otherwise, some trees and shrubs have come pro bono, other ones are overflow from other people's gardens. And basically what won them over, the administrator, the principal of the school, was she wanted Birch School to be seen as a good community member. And the compliments we get from people, because people trudge by for the subway, and Birch School is very, very happy, you know, and we maintain whatever. But it was, again, I quote her and she said, we want to be good community members. And even now they've been recruiting a variety of staff for their school, and they've put notices on the streetlights, you know, in the community. They're not putting it in LinkedIn or something like that, you know, so they're very, and we feel that we can use them to then go to these other owners.
So they are proof of concept.
Yeah.
Yes, that they see a proven concept, you know, and if we have to do it little by little, like maybe this piece here is gonna be too big, is too complicated, or that's a whole other, excuse me, can of worms. I'm a gardener, compared to the trash heap there along, you know, and what we see is physically, it's one chain link fence, and the gate to that with the padlock is right next to what's the red brick,
55 overlook.
45 overlook. And so to get in, you know, I mean, I was given the key to the Birch School lot, and we unlock it, we go in, we garden, and then we come out and we lock it. So again, it's a good example, hopefully an enticement. But if I may just jump in and say our frustration, because we have identified the owners of these, but we're stonewalled, you know, they don't pick up the phone. I mean, you know, why would they answer a phone call from an irate neighbor? So we need some official, higher level endorsement to get these guys to respond, because all of this negotiation is impossible right now because we can't get the owners to talk.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
just
think
to clarify.
the irate neighbor is never a good approach.
Well, so yes,
But no, but you know what I mean, just an
Yeah, yeah.
individual, and it'll blow
Yeah.
over, you know, and that's what they all kind of hope for, is, you know, that it'll blow over.
and just to clarify, like what Judy is saying, it has happened in the past. Since we started this project in the last couple of months, nobody has reached out yet. I've been holding off on first contact until we get at least some guidance from the board, but
Yeah,
even better, maybe someone from the board who would reach out on our behalf. Is that possible? Or even the Congress?
Actually,
Councilwoman.
what I was going to suggest is you're having a walkthrough with Steve Simon on Saturday. Steve has another event on Saturday. I have to remind him of that, but it's later in the day. But it'll be interesting.
He has 3 other.
Well, yes, but I mean, if you have the community-based organization and city parks and the councilwoman's office approaching, saying, this is, interesting concept that we'd like to discuss with you. that might be a way of doing it because you have the local stakeholders. The question that Ethan raised about, what you could do with the slope, I think parks could be invaluable in saying, what you could do with that. And then the council person is kind of that, city official.
I mean, what would be ideal for us would be for, this letter to come from her office on letterhead, So it's like, would be like our dream, if that's possible. You mentioned the Parks Department. I was first interested in contacting them as well. I was discouraged from doing that.
But
by Liz
the
Ritter.
walkthrough with Steve is in what capacity?
Health and environment.
Okay, but Steve is also the, chief of staff
Right.
for Manhattan
Chief of
Parks.
Staff of the Manhattan Office of Parks.
Oh.
So you can,
Whoops.
they're separate hats, but
Yeah.
it's the same
I
person.
didn't realize that. Well, I will ask him on Saturday.
Well, yeah.
That's great. I was discouraged by Liz Ritter to go to the Parks Committee of this.
Well, no, but he's not Parks Committee. He's literally city parks.
That's interesting. Maybe that's another reason why he said that the conservation easement was an interesting idea.
Yeah, because he would know.
Yeah.
If I can add something, at some point, and as I think Wayne pointed out, the one person whose name was mentioned so far with the most power, of course, Steve is very powerful in his organization in Manhattan, but the person with real power is our council person.
Yeah.
And, but the other thing, and I don't necessarily know why Liz Ritter suggested to avoid our Parks Committee, because it may not hurt if the community board via its committees, and we would probably coordinate it as a land use issue, and because it's green space, it's park-ish.
Right.
So we could, at some point in the future, if that would help matters, we could also pass a resolution that we, the community board, and these all-powerful volunteers, which we all we are, will make recommendations, but we could pass a resolution indicating that we also think it's an idea, and this here, a little more icing on the cake.
And that would be land use and parks and health and environment, because this is a environmental issue. So I mean, you'd have three committees looking at it from different perspectives, so that would be fun.
Is there something I could do we can do in our next steps to facilitate or to foster that?
What would our next steps be?
That's interesting. I really, well, number one, let's see what happens with Steve. And if you don't get to meet with him Saturday, do meet with him, because you now know about another hat.
Right.
And again, the other hat also, which is the important part, gives them all kinds of parkish expertise. So, they've dealt with slopes and rocks and this and that, where you don't want people to go, because it's steep, all this kind of stuff. So he could be a tremendous resource there. But it sounds like you haven't read, and I may be wrong, you may not have reached out yet to Carmen, our council person.
I did not.
But again, she's the one with the real power.
Do you know the best contact person?
You might speak to, as I said, our district manager, Kiana,
Kiana.
who used to be her right-hand
I
person.
did meet Kiana.
And
before.
find out from Kiana how best
Okay.
to get to Carmen, because I don't know if she's been replaced yet in Carmen's office.
No, but the thing is, as Wayne just said, and I'll just repeat, Kiana's you have all these perfect people floating around, because Kiana used to work for the council.
Right.
So she would be able to, and again, your concept, it's a wonderful thing, we just have to get everyone on board, and part of it, as you indicated, is if I were a landlord, and I got some random phone call.
Right.
And you won't even pick up, because it probably will be a complaint, and you'll think it won't be a complaint,
So what you might do as a next step is to further document what you did with the school, if that's the proof of concept. So to show us and to show parks and show health and environment what you did there, because that's an example of what you want to do with the rest of that. So I would have a little presentation on that. As I said, I would check Zola to get all that information. I would touch base with Kiana, so you can figure out how to approach the councilwoman. Believe it or not, I have a 9:30 meeting somewhere else.
Really?
Yes, I do.
That's why.
Tonight, yes.
Wow, I'm sorry.
Busy.
Busy.
Okay, I really appreciate your time.
And as I said before, do not disappear. Stay in touch.
You know, I think we have a little momentum going too.
Yes.
We have the majority of our members are not here tonight. Some were at the community board meeting last week. But yeah, I think we have some momentum, and I don't think we're going away.
We can do our best.
Be back in September.
But you can be in touch with Kiana and with individual members during the summer. We're not meeting, but we don't
Yeah.
disappear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Wayne, Eitan, Jim.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you. And all the best of luck.
Is there any old business? Is there any new business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Chair, I just wanted to remind everyone that tomorrow Housing and Human Services is going to have a presentation on the Inwood 9th Avenue affordable housing development and related projects. So we hope that you can join us tomorrow at 7.
Thank you.
And with that, it is what, 9:10? We technically never were called to order
Yes,
because we didn't have, well, we were called to attention. We didn't have
We
an,
needed to call, we now have.
yeah, well, but you
It
know,
was on Zoom.
Hector's on Zoom and it doesn't
Right.
count towards quorum, but you know, we called it to attention at 7:10 and we're calling it
Oh, I think
to,
it's been marvelously.
yeah, at 9:10. So good night all.
I'm actually excused.
Good night.
You got an official excuse?
Yes, I do.
Well, then you do count towards
No, it's a
quorum,
motion to.
but we're adjourned.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't know about the excuse.
Take care all.
Take care.
So if you have an excuse, you should email that so we know.
Okay,
All
understood.
right,
Will do. Thank you.
take care.
All right, take care, y'all.